Today on the Pitchbook podcast, we celebrate Jackie Robinson in episode 42 with our all-star break, giving you the top 5 books that we have pitched over the last 42 episodes. Batter up! Zach, we want to do something special.
Matt.
For episode 42. As most people know, that's Jackie Robinson's number, and he broke the color barrier. So we thought we'd honor him like they do in major leagues with a kind of a special episode and just kind of a reconnect. These are our all-stars. So this is our all-star break, just like in the majors. There's no home run derby. We're just going we're going to announce our all-stars, the top 5 books that we recommend or have pitched over the last 42 episodes. And then we're going to talk about maybe our favorite relief pitch book as well. So with that said, Zach, tell me number 5.
All right, number 5. This was in episode 37. I pitched Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini. And this was just a review of how people are influenced, the psychology of persuasion. Really powerful book. I recommend it since I read it a couple months ago. I think I've recommended I don't know how many times. Fantastic book. That's my number 5 pick.
Okay, very good. My number 5 is The Road to Wigan Pier by George Orwell. And this was a recommendation by a buddy of mine that lives in Wigan. And we were driving by the inlet or one of the piers. He's like, and he told me about this book. I had no idea that George Orwell had written a nonfiction book, and it's all about kind of the miners in that time and kind of how difficult a life they had. And it was a shocking book that I had no idea, kind of about what it was like to be a coal miner. And so I really thoroughly enjoyed that. The Road to Wigan Pier by George Orwell. All right, Zach.
And it was a great pitch. I remember that.
And
one.
it was that was episode number 6. So
number 6. Okay.
For your number 4, what is your number 4?
Number 4 was our doubleheader, Gulag Archipelago. The book that I read was called Gulag Archipelago Volume 1 by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. That was in episode 25. And I'm looking at my list now. I'm recognizing that as time goes on, I'm pitching worse and worse. No, the books are really good, but I'm working my way back to my number 1. But number 4, Gulag Archipelago, that was a documentary. Alexander lived in the gulags during the Russian, that period of time where they took millions of people prisoners, lots of people died, and he talks about his experience being in the prisoner camp. So fantastic book. It's a heavy read, but one I think everybody should read, especially that time frame, which has long been forgotten to history, but Alexander has kept the story alive. So that was my number 4. Matt,
Awesome.
what have you got for number 4?
Number 4 is Never Wrestle with a Pig. And that was episode number, let's see, 3? Number 3, yeah. Clearly, I was looking at my tops, and I'm like, oh, well, when we started to do this podcast, I picked some of my favorite books. So don't be surprised when some of mine are at the very beginning of this thing. Never Wrestle with a Pig is by Mark McCormack. And it's basically, it's a book where you can pick up and kind of read anywhere. But it's for anybody that's just getting started in professional life, it's a really good book to just kind of set expectations and kind of make sure that you're taking control of what you can control in your career, and just such good advice. I mean, ultimately, what he says is never wrestle with a pig because only the pig enjoys it, and you both get dirty. So, again, it's just tons of great information. Again, if you're starting early in your career, back when I used to manage a team of kind of people that were new, just graduated from college, we actually read that as a team multiple times and just had a book club because I just think it's so helpful for anybody starting out and probably good for anybody who's even in their career right now and needs a kind of a reality check. So Never Wrestle with a Pig by Mark McCormack. All right. Okay. Number 3.
Number three, I recently pitched on episode 40. This is the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, written by Eric Jorgensen. Naval was an Indian uh, migrant to New York City as a child. He grew up in the library, was raised by books, and he eventually became a successful investor, successful builder of businesses. And this book talks about how to build businesses, how to use leverage, how to have peace and happiness in your life. So it's just an all around a good book. Somebody who has been very successful, and in this book, it encapsulates the ways that he has found happiness, the way that he stays healthy, how he builds his success. And he believes that if he were reduced to zero, had nothing, and had to start over, following these principles, he could build it all over again. So fantastic
Awesome.
book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
And I
Matt,
did
what's
pick,
your number three?
well, I did pick that book up. I haven't started listening to it yet, but I did pick it up. Number three for me is Atlas by Teddy Atlas. And if you guys recall, this is episode 1, I think. And
That
Teddy
was
Atlas
the
is
first
a,
one.
yeah, famous boxing trainer. He trained Mike Tyson as he was growing up, and just an insane life that Teddy had. Um, it's remarkable that he survived, um, and became kind of a famous boxing trainer. Just regardless of if you even care about boxing or Mike Tyson or whatever, there's just so many awesome life lessons in that book. I would strongly recommend that to anybody. So that's number three.
Awesome.
Number two.
Number two, I picked The Fourth Turning. I pitched this in episode number 4, ironically. I don't think I meant to do that. Episode number 4, I pitched The Fourth Turning. This was written by economists William Strauss and Neil Howe. They talk about the cycles of history over the last 500 years, both in England and America, the 80 to 100-year period that we keep going through cycles. I've found since I read this book in 2020, we're now 4 years later, I'm still recommending that people read this book just to understand the times that we're in. History repeats itself. It rhymes. It may never be the exact same situation, but we find ourselves continually every 80 to 100 years in these periods of crisis. And it feels new to us, like it's never happened before. But when you go back in history, World War II, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, if you look at the time frames of those periods of crisis, they were all 80 to 100 years. And here we are in the 2020s, 80 years after World War II, finding ourselves in a debt crisis, a culture crisis. Just feels like things are kind of melting down. But the good news is we've come out of each crisis. We rebuild, we start over, build strong institutions, and grandkids are happy.
I was getting nervous for a second, so thank you for putting the positive spin on it. All right. Number two for me is Gulag by Anne Applebaum. So you'll remember that's
All right.
our double header. My book about the Gulag is a more comprehensive look. Anne Applebaum had kind of unprecedented access to some of the Russian documents and things that obviously Solzhenitsyn was kind of his personal experience and what he heard. So it's really cool. She actually references Solzhenitsyn quite a bit, but hers is very comprehensive history from like the very beginnings with Lenin all the way through up to the 90s, even where people were still in like political prisons in Russia. And again, one of the things that is just it's the size of the gulags and the volume of people that went through it is really incomprehensible. And one of the things that really stuck out to me from for what she talks about is that Germany and Europe does a very good job of remembering the Holocaust, and making sure that never happens again. But Russians are very they just want to forget about it, and that's kind of the Russian, I guess, culture is that they just want to kind of ignore it and move on, and part of that's because of the change from communism and so on. Anyway, she talked a lot about, and having been to Auschwitz now, it was to see the volume and scale there, and then realize like all the stuff that happened with the gulags, it's just kind of mind blowing. So that's a very heavy and very thick, long book, but I would strongly recommend it to anybody, really, just to get a sense of the history of what happened to all those people in Russia. It's crazy. All right, that's my number two. Number one, Zach.
All
What
right.
do you got for
Number one book. Well, like you said, we started out this podcast with some of our best books. This one was the very first episode. I don't know if you need to go back and listen to it. We were kind of early and we're still young, but it was pretty bad. I don't even think our microphones were turned the right direction. So the audio quality is not great. Episode number one, Thinking Fast and Slow by Dr. Economist Daniel Kahneman. He has since passed away within the last year. This work is one of the most cited books. If you're reading about mental models, you're reading about the brain, how human behavior functions. If you listen closely, you will hear Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. It is cited all over. Most of the books on my shelf behind me, his name is in there somewhere.
Right.
So this is a book that reads kind of like a textbook. It is really interesting. It's not a easy brain candy kind of a book. You do have to really focus and concentrate as you're reading it. But coming out of it, you really understand a lot about how the brain works. And it helps me to remember that when I'm tired, when I'm hungry, that I'm not operating at my best, just to kind of back away from making decisions and recognizing that in other people. When other people are tired, when they're hungry, when they're worn out, we tend to revert to the emotional part of our brain, not the logical, reasonable. So just a big salute to Daniel Kahneman. That's a fantastic work. It's a anchor in my library. I've read it a couple times, and he was number one of all the books I reviewed this past 42 episodes.
All right, for me, number one.
Okay.
I told you guys when I first pitched this book, this is in episode 2, that this is my favorite book of all time. And I actually had to reread it to prep for that that podcast because I love it so much. And that is River of Darkness by Buddy Levy. And the River of Darkness is Francisco Orellana's discovery of the Amazon River. And you'll remember he's with one of the Pizarro brothers. They're going to go down. They're trying to find the land of cinnamon and land of gold. And they're told these great stories of people covered, a guy that bathes in gold dust. And anyway, but Oriana is the reason it's called the Amazons, because they end up fighting some very strong female warriors. And he names them after the Amazons after I think it's Greek mythology. And anyway, what's cool about the book is that Buddy Levy writes it as a story, but it's completely based on one of the friars or whatever they are, one of the friars' journals. So there was a couple of people that were religious, obviously they're Spanish explorers, that kept track of everything that happened to Oriana and the group. And just the fact that they survived is truly unbelievable. Fantastic book. It's one of those books that's like truth is stranger than fiction. It's crazy that it happened. And it's anyway, I just love that book, River of Darkness by Buddy Levy. So that's my number one. All right, that's our top 5 all-stars each. We do have a little special something for our relief pitchers. We really appreciate them coming on. And again, if you're interested in coming on and pitching a book, let us know. Reach out to us. We're happy to have you on. Tell me your favorite relief pitcher, an all-star for you.
Okay, this was really tough. I went through every episode, looked at every name. What I have come to understand is I'm encircled by greatness. We know a lot of great people, and there were so many people these last 42 episodes that came on to be a relief pitcher. So it was really difficult for me because each episode I thought they just brought their best, did an amazing job. The relief pitcher, I have to pick one that I'm going to go with today. I'm curious, and we don't know. Like, I didn't know you were going to pitch those books.
Yeah,
and I have no idea. I don't know. I could
I'm
guess.
curious if we have the same book. We'll see.
Maybe. All right. So this one was kind of an interesting episode. This was with Derek Bice,
Okay,
episode number 34. Derek trained with the Navy SEALs. Matt and I, this was a doubleheader. We both studied a couple books on the history of the Navy SEALs. Derek came on to share his personal experience of doing Bud's training. I felt like that episode we could have gone for 3 or 4 hours. I feel
sure.
like we were just kind of scratching the surface. So for that, I'm going to give a salute to Derek Bies for being our relief pitcher, telling some excellent stories and just kind of entertaining us. So he did an awesome job.
Okay, perfect. I went with our good friend Nate Thompson and leadership and self-deception. And the reason I did is that Nate is very candid in that podcast, and I don't know if raw is the right word, but he just is very personal and gets into like why it was such a profound book for him. And I really loved it. He's a great guy and truly one of those guys that's just trying to get better and improve his life and those around him. One of the nicest guys truly that I've ever met. So I thought that the book he picked and the way he pitched it was fantastic. That's my relief pitcher. I did really enjoy, and he's my brother, but so I'm maybe a little biased. I really enjoyed Brad's pitch recently of An Immense World, where he talks about all the senses of the animals. But I thought that maybe was a little bit recency bias because I did just start listening to that book. But I'm going to go with Nate. So really appreciate everybody that's been on the podcast, truly. And if you want to come on, let us know. All right. Any closing thoughts for the All-Star break?
No, I think this is so fun. We just want to pause and thank everybody for listening, for keeping this rolling. It's fun to see the growth, to see more and more people listening. Please share the episode. We hope it's helpful. We're going to take all of the books from this episode, our top 10, with the 2 relief pitcher books that were pitched, and we're going to put those in the show notes. So if you want to pick Matt and I's top 10 books or the 2 relief pitchers books, we're going to put those in the show notes. You can easily access them and order them on Amazon. We just want to continue to put good information out there, good books out there, promote the best thoughts and ideas, and we'll keep rolling for the next 42.
All righty. Thanks again, everybody. Again, truly appreciate having Deja Vega allow us to use their music. Check that band out. They're fantastic. And like, subscribe, share, check out some of these books. And again, if you want to come on the podcast, you know where to find us. Thanks for listening to the Pitchbook podcast. We'll catch you next time.